I thought discovering my wife's affair would be the worst blow to our 21-year marriage. I was mistaken. The message she sent me a year after we divorced unveiled a betrayal that shattered me, forced me to reevaluate everything I believed about the woman I had planned to spend my life with. My name is Neil Whitman. I'm 52 years old, and until 3 years ago, I believed I had everything under control. I built Whitman Industrial Supply from the ground up into a multi-million-dollar business supplying heavy machinery and equipment to factories across the Midwest. 26 years of 16-hour days, missed family dinners and phone calls on weekends finally paid off. The company was booming. My 2 children, Samuel and Sierra, did well in school, and my wife, Monica, appeared happy with our comfortable suburban life outside Chicago. That October Tuesday evening began like any other. I just signed a deal with a steel plant in Gary, Indiana, a contract worth nearly $500,000. I was on a high, planning to treat Monica to a nice dinner to celebrate, maybe try to revive some of the spark we'd lost along the way. I pulled into our driveway around 7:30, later than normal but not unusual for me. The house was unusually quiet when I walked in, and that felt wrong. Normally, Monica had the TV going in the kitchen while she cooked, and I could hear Sierra practicing piano upstairs. "Monica, you home?" I called, setting my briefcase down by the front door. No reply. I moved through the living room toward the kitchen, loosening my tie. Then I heard it. Laughter from upstairs, but not the kind I associated with my wife. This was different, intimate, the sound she'd used to reserve for me back when we were dating. My stomach clenched as I climbed the stairs, each step heavier than the one before. The noise came from our bedroom, and the door was ajar. I approached carefully, not ready to accept the truth my gut was hinting at. Through the crack, I saw Monica on our bed in a silk robe I had given her last Christmas. She held her phone on a video call with someone. Her posture was loose, flirtatious, in a way I hadn't seen aimed at me in years. "I can't wait to see you this weekend," Monica said to the person on the screen. "It's been too long since our last trip." I felt my blood run cold. "Trip? What trip?" A man's voice came through the phone. "I know, baby. I've been thinking about you constantly since Chicago." Chicago? The conference she'd attended last month. The one where she claimed she was meeting potential vendors for her interior design consultancy. I froze in the hallway, watching the woman I had been married to for 21 years flirt with another man in the bed we shared. She hadn't seen me yet, absorbed in her call and oblivious to my presence. "Monica," I said, quietly, pushing the door open a little more. She spun around so fast she almost dropped the phone. Her face went white when she saw me standing there. The guilt in her eyes said everything I needed to know. "Neil, this isn't what it looks like," she stammered, hastily ending the call. But I had already heard more than enough. The casual closeness, the talk of trips I knew nothing about, the glow she'd worn lately. Pieces of a puzzle I'd ignored for too long slotted together. I didn't scream or hurl objects like in movies. I just stared, feeling like I was looking at a stranger wearing my wife's face. "Who was that?" I asked, my voice oddly composed. Monica clutched her phone to her chest, her mouth opening and closing with no words. That silence said it all. I left the bedroom without another word. Nothing she could say right then would make sense of what I'd seen, and I wasn't going to let her spin more lies. I went straight to my home office and poured 3 fingers of bourbon. My hands shook as I raised the glass to my lips. After 21 years of marriage, I'd caught my wife in the act with another man. The worst part wasn't the affair itself. It was realizing how long I'd been living in a fool's paradise. Around midnight, Monica knocked lightly on the office door. "Neil, we need to talk," she said. "Through the wood." "No, we don't," I replied, not looking up from the financial reports I pretended to review. She opened the door anyway and stepped in, wearing jeans and a sweater. Her eyes were rimmed in red. I couldn't tell whether from crying or exhaustion. "What you saw tonight?" "It's complicated," Monica started. I finally looked at her. "Complicated? You were half naked talking to another man about trips I didn't know you'd taken. That sounds pretty straightforward to me." Monica sat down in the chair across from my desk without being invited. "You don't understand the situation we've been in, Neil. We haven't been happy for years." I set my glass down harder than I meant to. "Don't make excuses for cheating. When's the last time we went out together?" Monica shot back. "When's the last time you asked me how my day was? You come home, eat in silence and disappear into this office until bed." I stood, feeling my temper rise. "I've been working my rear end off to provide for this family. Every 16-hour day, every missed dinner, every weekend phone call was for you and the kids. Providing isn't the same as being present," Monica said, her tone sharpening. "I needed a husband, not just a paycheck. So you found one somewhere else." I walked around the desk to face her. "How long has this been going on?" Monica looked away. "It started as just talking online about 6 months ago." 6 months. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "And the trip to Chicago, that's when we met in person for the first time," she admitted. "Jesus, Monica." I ran my hands through my hair. "Do you have any idea what you've done to us? To Samuel and Sierra? The kids don't have to know anything," Monica said quickly. "We can fix this. Go to counseling." I made a mistake. Mistake? I interrupted. "A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk." This was a choice. Repeated choices over 6 months. Monica stood and tears began to fall. "I know I hurt you, but I was lonely. I felt invisible in my own marriage." "You were invisible because you chose to be," I said, my voice steady despite the anger coiling inside me. "Instead of telling me about our problems, you went looking for attention somewhere else." "So what happens now?" Monica asked, wrapping her arms around herself. I looked at the woman I'd shared my life with for over 2 decades and realized I didn't know her anymore. The Monica I married wouldn't have done this, but maybe that Monica had never actually existed. "Now you sleep in the guest room," I said. "Tomorrow we figure out what comes next." Deep down I already knew the answer. Betrayals can't be forgiven, and some trust, once broken, can't realistically be rebuilt. The next morning, I called my attorney. Before Monica was awake, Richard Steinberg had handled my business contracts for years, and I trusted him to be blunt with me. "Neil, I'm sorry to hear this," Richard said on the phone. "How long has this been going on?" "At least 6 months that I know of," I answered, sitting in my office with the door locked. "But I'm beginning to think it might be longer." "What makes you say that?" he asked. "I've been turning it over all night." There were signs I ignored: late nights on design projects, weekend trips to see clients that felt excessive. "She's been distant for over a year now. Do you want to try counseling first?" Richard asked. "No," I said without hesitation. I caught her red-handed. "Richard, there's no coming back from this." After I hung up with Richard, I did something I probably should have done months earlier. I began, looking closely at details. Monica's credit card statements, her phone bills, her calendar. What I found made my blood boil. Hotel charges in Chicago I hadn't known about. Expensive dinners for two, when she said she was dining alone. Phone calls to the same number that lasted 4 hours, always while I was at work. But the real clincher was receipts for lingerie I'd never seen her wear. Victoria's Secret, Fredericks of Hollywood. Hundreds of dollars worth of items that weren't meant for me. When Monica came downstairs around 10 o'clock, she found me at the kitchen table with a pile of statements spread out in front of me. "What's all this?" she asked, pouring coffee. "Your spending habits," I said, not looking up. Interesting reading. Monica's face paled as she saw the hotel receipts. "Neil, I can explain." Can you?" I stood, holding one of the receipts. "The Marriott in Chicago, September 15th. You told me you were staying at the conference hotel." "I was," Monica said. "Weekly. The conference was at the Hyatt." I replied. "I checked." Monica sank into the chair across from me. For the first time since this began, she looked defeated. "How long?" I asked. "And don't lie to me anymore. I'm done with lies." 2 years, she whispered. 2 years. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Jesus. Monica. 2 years. "It started online," she said, tears now flowing. "Just chatting at first, then video calls. The first time we met in person was last year during your supposed sister's wedding in Detroit." I asked. Monica nodded, unable to meet my eyes. Something inside me shut off completely. This wasn't simply an affair. It was a double life. For 2 years, she'd been lying to my face. Every single day. "I want you out," I said, quietly. "Neil, please," Monica begged. "Pack your things and go stay with your parents. I'll have Richard draw up separation papers." Monica looked at me with desperate eyes. "What about Samuel and Sierra? What about them?" I asked. "You should have thought about them before you decided to destroy their family." Samuel was the first to notice. At 17, he was perceptive enough to sense the strain in the house and smart enough to piece things together when he overheard part of a phone call between Monica and her mother. He cornered me in the garage one Saturday morning while I worked on my truck, something I did when I needed to think with my hands. "Dad," Samuel said, leaning on my workbench, "is Mom having an affair?" I stopped what I was doing and looked at my son. He had my eyes and Monica's stubborn chin. And at that moment he looked older than 17. "What makes you ask that?" I said, carefully. "Come on, Dad," Samuel replied. "She's been staying at Grandma's for 3 days. You look like someone died. And I heard her on the phone yesterday, apologizing to someone named Nash." Nash. The name landed like a blow to my gut. So that was his name. I set down my wrench and faced my son. Samuel deserved the truth, or at least as much of it as I could give him without destroying his relationship with his mother. "Yes," I said simply. "She is." Samuel nodded as if he'd expected that. "How long?" 2 years. "Damn," Samuel said then. Looked at me with apology. "Sorry. It's okay, son. I've thought worse things than that." We stood in silence for a long moment, both of us taking in what this meant for our family. "What happens now?" Samuel asked. "I don't know yet," I admitted. "Your mother and I are going to separate, probably divorce. But that won't change anything between you kids and us. Sierra doesn't know yet," Does she? Samuel asked. No, I said. I'd rather tell her together with her mother when the time is right. Samuel picked up one of my tools, turning it over in his hands. I'm not surprised, you know, about Mom. That caught me off guard. What do you mean? She's been different the last year or so, Samuel explained. Happy in a way that didn't include us. That makes sense. Like she had some secret that made her smile. My son's observation stung because it felt true. Monica had been glowing recently, and I had been foolish enough to assume it meant she was content with our life. Are you okay? I asked Samuel. He shrugged. I'm 17, Dad. I'll be going to college next year anyway. But Sierra is going to be messed up about this. We'll help her through it. Said. Yeah. Samuel agreed. Then he looked me squarely in the eye. For what it's worth, Dad, I don't blame you. I've seen how hard you work for us. Coming from my son, those words meant more than any apology Monica could give. Monica moved back in with her parents, but that didn't stop her attempts to manipulate things. She called, constantly sent long text messages, apologizing, and even came to my office twice trying to convince me to take her back. What you didn't know was I'd hired a private investigator. Tony Mark Eli came recommended by Richard, my attorney, a former police detective who specialized in adultery cases. Within a week he'd uncovered more than I had bargained for. Your wife's been busy, Tony said, sitting across from my desk with a thick folder in his hands. This Nash character, his full name is Damon Cross. He's 38, divorced, works in medical equipment sales. How did they meet? I asked. Online dating site. Tony replied. She created a profile 2.5 years ago using her maiden name. 2.5 years. I echoed. Even longer than I'd suspected. There's more, Tony continued, opening the folder. Bank records show she opened a second checking account 18 months ago. She's been funneling money from your joint account. Small amounts, but regular. About $2,000 a month. $2,000. I felt my blood pressure spike. What? Ted. And there was one more thing you had to see. He pressed a photograph into my hand that knocked the breath out of me. Monica and Damon Cross sitting at some restaurant, looking close, almost intimate. That wasn't even the worst part. The timestamp was. The picture had been taken 3 weeks earlier, after I'd already caught her and thrown her out. She's still seeing him, I asked. Never stopped. Tony confirmed. They've met twice just this week. I stared at the print, any leftover sympathy for Monica draining away. She'd been begging for forgiveness while secretly carrying on with her lover. There's one more thing, Tony said. Cross has been married twice before. Both marriages ended because of his affairs. Your wife is his first rodeo. That night I called Samuel and Sierra into the living room for the conversation I'd been dreading. Your mother and I are getting divorced, I said softly. Sierra, my 14-year-old, burst into tears right away. Is it because of us? No, sweetheart, I said, drawing her into my arms. This isn't about you. Or Samuel. Sometimes adults make choices that wound the people they love. Samuel, who already knew the truth, wrapped an arm around his sister. Mom made some bad decisions, Sierra. Dad's not the one who messed up. Can't you fix it? Sierra pleaded through her tears. Some things can't be fixed, I said, my chest breaking for her. But the one thing that won't change is how much your mother and I love you both. The following day, Monica showed up at the house while I was at work and the kids were at school. When I walked in, I found her rifling through my home office. What are you doing? I demanded. Monica spun and held some of my business files. I have a right to know about our finances, she said. Our finances? I took the papers from her. You mean the finances you've been stealing from for 2 years? Her face drained of color. I don't know what you're talking about, she lied. I walked to my desk and pulled out the bank statements Tony had given me. $2,000 a month. Monica. For 2 years. That's $48,000 you've taken from our family to fund your affair. Monica finally broke. I needed that money. You don't understand what it's been like living with you, she wailed. Living with me? I asked, incredulous. I'm not the one who's been cheating and lying and stealing. You're cold, Neil, Monica shot back, her voice rising. You come home, you eat, you work, you sleep. When's the last time you told me you love me? When's the last time you gave me a reason to? I fired back. The worst part of Monica's betrayal wasn't only personal. It reached into my professional life. She'd managed the books for Whitman Industrial Supply for 5 years. Now I had to question every ledger entry. I spent the weekend combing through every financial record, every invoice, every transaction she touched. What I uncovered made my stomach twist. Tiny amounts at first, 500 here, $000 there, logged as business expenses or supplier payments that never happened. Over 3 years she'd siphoned nearly $75,000 from the company. Monday morning I called Richard right away. This changes everything, Richard said after I explained what I'd found. Business embezzlement is a felony. She could face serious jail time. I don't want to destroy her, I said. But I can't let this slide either. You need to protect yourself and your business, Richard advised. File a police report. Document everything. If you don't act, you could be seen as complicit. That afternoon I had the hardest talk of my life with my father-in-law, Vernon Pute. Vernon was 71, a retired steelworker who'd always treated me like the son he never had. He'd helped me land my first big contract 20 years ago. I respected him more than almost any man I knew. Vernon, I need to tell you something about Monica, I said when he opened the door. We sat in his living room and I laid it all out. The affair, the stolen money, the lies. Vernon listened without interrupting, his weathered face growing harder with every detail. How much did she take? He finally asked. From the business? $75,000. From our personal accounts? Another $48,000. Vernon was silent a long time. Then he did something I didn't expect. He reached into his wallet and pulled out a checkbook. What are you doing? I asked. I'm writing you a check for $125,000, Vernon said, his voice steady. Vernon, no. I can't let you do that. You can and you will, he interrupted. My daughter stole from you. That makes it my responsibility to make it right. She's not your responsibility, I protested. Vernon looked up with steel in his eyes. I raised her to be better than this. I failed somewhere along the way, and now you're paying the price. You didn't fail, I assured him. Monica made her own choices. Maybe, Vernon said, continuing to write. But I won't let her destroy the business you built. You've been more of a son to me than she's been a daughter. He handed me the check and I noticed his hands were trembling a little. There's one more thing you should know, Vernon said. Monica's mother and I are cutting her out of our will. What she did to you and those kids is unforgivable. The loyalty from my father-in-law meant more to me than he'd ever know. It also made something clear. Even Monica's own father thought what she'd done was beyond redemption. 2 weeks after I filed for divorce, I learned that Monica and Damon Cross had taken their relationship into territory that threatened everything I'd built. Tony, my private investigator, called me at work with urgent news. Neil, we have a problem, Tony said. Cross has been taking photos of your financial documents. Someone's been feeding him inside information about your business. What kind of information? I asked, a chill running down my spine. Client lists, supplier contracts, profit margins. The kind of stuff that could erase your competitive advantage if it fell into the wrong hands. I sank into my office chair. Monica, that's my guess. Tony confirmed. She had access to everything before you threw her out. Question is, what's Cross planning to do with it? I found out the next day when 3 of my biggest clients called to cancel their contracts. Each offered the same vague excuse about exploring other options and reassessing their supply chain needs. But when I pressed Jim Patterson from Midwest Manufacturing, a man I'd been dealing with for 15 years, he finally told me the truth. Neil, someone's been calling our purchasing department, Jim said reluctantly. They're offering the same equipment you provide, but at 20% below your prices. They knew details about our contracts that only you should know. Who was calling? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. A guy named Cross said he worked for a new distribution company called Superior Industrial Supply. My blood boiled. Damon Cross wasn't just sleeping with my wife. He was using information she'd given him to gut my business. I phoned Richard immediately. "This is industrial espionage," Richard said after I explained. "It's a federal crime. We can not only stop him, we can sue for damages." "Do it," I said without hesitation. "Whatever it takes." That evening I sat Samuel and Sierra down for another hard conversation. "Kids, I need you to know that your mother's friend is trying to hurt our family business," I said carefully. Samuel's jaw tightened. "What do you mean?" "He's using information that only someone in our family would know to steal our customers." "Mom told him," Sierra asked, her voice small. "Looks that way," I admitted. Samuel stood and paced to the window. "So she's not just cheating on you. She's trying to destroy everything we have." "Your mother made some very bad choices," I said, "but we're going to fight back." "What can we do?" Samuel asked. "We're going to show them the Whitman family doesn't back down from a fight." The next morning I did something that surprised everyone, myself included. Instead of only defending, I went on offense. I called every client Cross had contacted and gave them an offer they couldn't refuse. A 5-year contract at 15% below my current rates with a guarantee I'd match any competitor's price for the life of the deal. It cost me short-term profit, but it secured my clients and cut Cross off at the knees. Then I held a press conference. "Ladies and gentlemen," I told the trade journalists in my office, "I want to warn the industrial supply community about a new company called Superior Industrial Supply run by Damien Cross. This individual has been using stolen proprietary information to undercut legitimate businesses." The story ran in 3 trade publications that week. Within days, Cross's reputation in the industry was ruined. But Monica wasn't finished playing dirty. Her next move was so low and calculating it made me realize I'd never really known the woman I'd married. She accused me of domestic violence. I was at the office when Richard called with the news. "Neil, Monica's filed for a restraining order," Richard said, his voice grim. "She claims you've been threatening her and that she fears for her safety." "That's insane," I said. "I haven't even spoken to her in 2 weeks." "I know, but the judge has to take these allegations seriously. There's a hearing scheduled for tomorrow." That night I had to explain to Samuel and Sierra why police officers were at our door serving me with papers. "Dad, you never hurt Mom," Sierra said, tears in her eyes. "I know, sweetheart," I said, holding her. "But sometimes people lie when they're desperate." Samuel was furious. "She's trying to make you look like the bad guy so she can get more money in the divorce," he said. "Maybe," I agreed, "but we're going to handle this the right way, with truth and evidence." The hearing the next day was awful. Monica took the stand and claimed I'd been emotionally abusive for years, that I'd threatened to destroy her financially, and that she feared I might become violent. She was a convincing actress. Tears at the right moments, a trembling voice when she described her fear. But Richard was ready. "Mrs. Whitman," Richard said during cross-examination, "isn't it true that you've been having an affair with Mr. Damon Cross for over 2 years? That has nothing to do with Dash. Please answer the question. Have you been having an affair?" "Yes, but Dash." "And isn't it true that Mr. Cross has been using confidential information about your husband's business to steal his clients?" Monica's attorney objected, but the damage was done. The judge could see what this was really about. "And Mrs. Whitman," Richard continued, "when exactly did these alleged threats occur?" "Because my client has been staying at his brother's house for the past week to avoid any contact with you." Monica's story began to unravel under scrutiny. She couldn't give specific dates or witnesses to back her claims. Her own testimony showed our interactions had been minimal and through attorneys. The judge denied her restraining order. "Mrs. Whitman," the judge said sternly, "making false accusations of domestic violence is a serious matter. These allegations appear motivated by divorce proceedings rather than genuine safety concerns." Walking out of the courthouse, I felt like I'd won a major battle. But I also understood Monica was willing to wreck my reputation, my relationship with our children, and my standing in the community to get what she wanted. The woman I'd married was gone, replaced by someone who would stop at nothing. But she'd picked the wrong man to underestimate. I'd built my business from scratch, survived recessions and competitive attacks, and I wasn't going to let her destroy what I'd created. The gloves were off. It was time to play hardball. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I made a decision that would end Monica's games for good. She'd fought the financial settlement tooth and nail, insisting she deserved more despite her theft and betrayal. What she didn't know was I'd planned my next move carefully. During our marriage, we'd accumulated assets across accounts and investments. The court ordered a 50-50 split, but there were legal ways to protect what was rightfully mine. I liquidated my business holdings and reorganized everything under a new corporation with Samuel as a 51% partner. At 17, he was old enough to understand what we were doing and why. "Dad, is this legal?" Samuel asked in the attorney's office. "Completely legal," Richard confirmed. "Your father is giving you a majority stake in a new company. Monica has no claim to assets that didn't exist during the marriage." Within a month, I transferred all equipment, contracts, and client relationships to Whitman and Son Industrial Supply. Monica would receive half of what the old company was worth on paper, but that company no longer held real assets. She hired 3 different attorneys trying to overturn the restructuring, but each told her the same thing: what I'd done was perfectly legal. The final blow came when her own father, Vernon, made an announcement at a family gathering that Sierra later told me about. "Grandpa told everyone that Mom embarrassed the whole family," Sierra said during one of our dinners. "He said she chose a criminal over her own children." Vernon had kept his word about cutting Monica out of his will. When he passed 8 months later, Monica discovered her inheritance, nearly $500,000, would be divided between Samuel, Sierra, and a scholarship fund Vernon had set up. Even in death, Vernon protected his grandchildren from their mother's poor choices. The business restructuring also let me do something I'd always wanted: make Samuel a real partner. At 18, he already showed business instincts and a work ethic that reminded me of myself at his age. "Son, you've earned this," I told him the day we signed the partnership papers. "You stood by me when it mattered most." By the time Anukika realized what I'd done, it was too late. She'd lost not just her marriage and her children's respect, but her financial security and the family's legacy. The woman who thought she could have it all ended up with almost nothing. 1 year after our divorce was final, I got an email that changed everything I thought I knew about Monica. I was in the office late on a Thursday when the subject line made my blood run cold. "The truth you deserved to know years ago." The email was from Monica, but what she admitted was worse than anything I'd found during the divorce. "Neil," the message began, "I know you hate me and you have every right to, but there's something I should have told you long ago and I can't carry this secret anymore. The affair with Damien wasn't my first. I've been cheating on you for 15 years. 15 years. My hand shook as I read on. "It started when Sierra was just a baby. You were working so much building the business and I felt invisible. I met someone online and it turned physical. A 2-year relationship. After that ended, there were others. Short affairs, weekend flings, men I met through work." The room spun as I absorbed what she was confessing. 15 years of betrayal. 15 years of living a lie. "I know this doesn't change anything now," Monica continued, "but I needed you to understand our problems weren't only about the last few years. I stopped being faithful to our marriage almost from the beginning. And I'm sorry." She went on to name specific affairs, specific lies she'd told, specific times I had suspected something but convinced myself I was paranoid. Every business trip, every girls' night out, every weekend she claimed to need space. Most were covers for affairs. The most devastating line came at the end of the email. "I want you to know that Samuel and Sierra are definitely your children. I had DNA tests done years ago because I wasn't sure, but they're yours." She'd had DNA tests because she wasn't sure if my children were actually mine. The betrayal was so total it took my breath away. But as I sat there rereading her confession, I realized this wasn't just Monica finally telling the truth. It was her last attempt to hurt me. She wanted me to believe our entire marriage had been a sham, to doubt every memory, every happy moment. She wanted me to feel like the biggest fool alive. Instead, I felt liberated. All the guilt I'd carried about the failed marriage, the self-doubt about whether I could have done something different, the lingering question of whether I'd been too harsh, it all vanished. Monica had never been the woman I thought I'd married. The real Monica had been a liar and a cheater from almost the start. The woman I loved had never really existed. I deleted the email without replying and went home to my children. Dad, you look different tonight, Sierra said when I walked in.
Different